Hey everybody, welcome to the latest installment of Look and Live. I'm your host Justin Irvin, longtime cinematographer and director with many projects under my belt, including a couple you can watch on Netflix and Amazon. But right now, thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel, Look and Live, where I am going to show you the techniques I use to create an interview within 1 hour in one location using one personnel in under 1 hour. Did I say that? Department of Redundancy, department at your service. Today's episode is going to be our inaugural episode where I'm going to show you what you probably encounter a lot of the time, which is a blank white box apartment or similar, and how to properly expose your subject for a backlit window with the proper lighting accessories. I want your comments, I want your thoughts, I want your takeaways from this first run at our wonderful tutorial series. Shoot me your comments below, like, subscribe, share. Let's get into it. Look and live. We are in a position where we have huge bay windows. I am now what? Backlit. How are we going to account for this? I think the first thing, first and foremost, is to bring the camera up. Lena, why don't we place you in the chair right here? And so what I'm gonna do is take a look at our frame. Boom. So what I'm doing now, you'll see from the A-cam here, is trying to figure out which composition I like. Do I want to lean into the white wall? Do I want to make use of this couch here? Do I want to pull our talents in it, please? Even further into the room, maybe about here-ish. So this looks good to me. I'm gonna keep rolling here. I'm gonna set up the tripod about here-ish and go from there. One of the other challenges is that within this 1 hour, as is the case on set, when you're under the time clock, under the time crunch, with producers and directors and crew members waiting on you, setup time is real. And I didn't want to shy away from that. So as I fiddle with the camera, as I raise the tripod, as I bring up the support with the C-stands and light stands and so forth, this is all a part of the time crunch. This is all a part of the 1 hour. So please keep that in mind, because time is money and you will be required to account for both. So you may notice it's just me, myself, and I. Ideally, you have a crew, but you don't always have the luxury of a crew. So what can you do with the tools afforded you at any point in time to get in, get out, and make your best work? So this is gonna work for me now. So now that we have the composition set, as you'll see here in the A-cam, now we're gonna talk about lighting. We're gonna talk about how to give our subject here enough exposure to illuminate her face so it's not conflicting with the background. The aperture is wide open. I want to create as much depth of field and open up the f-stop to a 2.8. The ISO is set to 800, the aperture is at 2.8, and right now I'm going to begin to add some ND to it. Why ND? Because then that allows us to see what's outside the window. We'll start at ND4 and go from there. While we're doing that, I'm going to sort of pick from a couple different options that I brought myself in terms of lighting. First unit is a larger LED, 500 watt LED equivalent. Tennis balls, why? So we don't scratch up the marble floor of your billionaire interviewee. If you're going to Jeff Bezos' house, you know, you don't want to embarrass yourself and then also embarrass the EPs with a fine for scratching the fine Carrara marble. All right. The other unit I brought is an LED panel light. This one I can use one of two ways. I think the first thing I want to do is give ourselves our key. And so what is a key? Yes, it opens doors, but in this case, your key light is the primary light that you're going to use to illuminate your subject. So with that, let me take a moment and get our key light set up. Part of the challenge of this thing, again, is to make sure that you are paying attention to the clock, because that's the one thing that will be, I don't care how far, how high you climb, so-called, in this business, you are always going to be competing against the clock. One of the key aspects about this light that I'm choosing, and the reason I'm choosing is because of the soft quality of light. Now, this particular light is able to go not only from daylight colored to tungsten colored, but a range in between. Should have these on the right-hand side. Why? Because the weight of the light that it's bearing actually tightens to the right, not to the left. So the last thing you want is for something to fall, is for something to become loose. So even as the light by gravity is pulling this way, it's also tightening the handle. Lena, striking. Ta-da, we're lit. Now, you saw in the A cam, the light come on, illuminate her face, and bring some ambience to it. What I wanna do first and foremost is change the color temperature to match daylight. Color temperature is measured in Kelvin. The higher the number, the more white the light is. The lower the number, the more orange the light is. And so this is to reflect a color temperature. So I like to shoot, so 56 is traditional daylight. That's probably matching pretty well with what we see outside. I'll keep it there for now. I'll have to look at the monitor and increase the exposure to what makes sense for this room. But for now, we'll put it at 60% on our key. So looking in monitor, I also think that this is probably a bit too dark, but we're not done lighting yet. Let me just A-B it right here with ND at 2. See, once we take the ND down to 2, we lose the cityscape in the background. We want to preserve that. ND up to 4, we can see the building, and we still need more ambience on our friend Lena. So let's crank it up. This is all to taste. One of the things also you want to pay attention to is how the brightness of the light affects the eyes of your talent's vision. Let's begin to add our fill light. Our fill light is going to bring another aesthetic to this as well. Let's see, what is our time check? We're currently at 24 minutes, all right. I'm choosing this particular type of lighting because I want to keep the feel in the room of bounced light. Everybody knows when you're watching a film that someone was there to shoot and light it, although it shouldn't be so painfully obvious that your project feels lit. You want to make sure that you're maintaining a healthy balance of your artistry without showing your hand. So one of the things you can do is take a cue from the environment that you're already in. And so since we're in a white walled apartment, let's make this feel like the light is coming from a bounce source in the room. Essentially, you are choosing a side of the face for which your shadow is going to fall. Traditionally, and it's fun to break the rules sometimes, but you have to know what the rules are in order to break them successfully, is that your key light is coming from the opposite side of the line of your camera angle's direction. So you can see when you look at the A cam that the camera is to the right of Lena. That means our key light is coming to the left. Therefore, the light coming from this direction is washing over her face and creating a little bit of drama on this side. Drama, I guess, meaning visual interest. This isn't First 48, but it could be. And that would create a whole different aesthetic. But right now we see a really lovely soft light from this unit cascading over her face this way. Then when you saw the fill light come in, it not only illuminated the scene, but also granted a bit of softness and wrap around our talent's face. So now it's about dialing that in. And that's the part where the time challenge really kicks in. Another thing to pay attention to is what's happening in your frame. And this is where designing the background is going to come into play. 36 minutes. So we're not doing awful, we're doing pretty good. Let's see if we can make this scene a little bit dressier. Does this composition work? There's really no way to teach precisely what that means because it's informed by a history of viewing lots of images, the moving picture as well as still imagery, to know how to direct your viewer's eye for maximum communication. And if the plant is in the wrong spot, it's communicating the wrong thing. But we want to continue to keep our attention where it should be, which is on our subject. And now we got this big old plant in the left-hand corner, which I'm not that much of a fan of. One of the reasons I placed Lena where I did was because of the leading line of the couch. So geometrically, the couch is leading us toward her face quite literally, as are the lines in the couch. Not just the rear of the couch, but everything is leading us toward her face. I'm not gonna shine it on her, obviously. How do we feel about that practical? I don't know. Another thing we can do, rather than fiddle with the ND, is we can change our ISO a bit. There are ideal, or I guess recommended ISO settings for the camera, but I don't mind playing with them. Let's take the ISO down to 500. Now our false color reads a little bit better. Let's take the ISO down to 400. That's a bit dark, but we can remember that we're still only at 36% on our light. Let's take it up to 60% on the fill. That helps a bit. Let's take our key light up to, that's at 80. Let's take our key light up to 100. Great. How's it for your eyes, Lena?
Good.
Okay. That exposure is a lot better on the outside, but do y'all see what I see? There's a reflection in the window of the key light, of the fill light here. You can see my hand going over. Let's see how we can mitigate that. Also, we need a little more fill in our talent space because we did lose a stop or so of exposure from changing that ISO. Yeah. So ideally, what we would do in this situation, oh, you know what? Maybe I can mitigate it. What time is it? 42 minutes. Well, it's looking a little dark to me either way. So let's go back to a more manageable exposure index of 640. I think that splits the difference nicely. Looking at our false color, she's properly exposed. Outside is what outside is. But the great thing about these cameras is a lot of these modern cameras allow you enough latitude, enough dynamic range to bring down your highlights enough so that you're not completely out of luck. Let's see if I have what it takes, time-wise and gear-wise, to cut down on the brightness of that wall. I still see the reflection here, but this time challenge is, I guess they call it a challenge for a reason, huh? Negative fill is the opposite of what this light is doing. This light is a positive fill. There's light being illuminated onto a surface, bouncing onto your subject, and filling the image. Negative fill is meant to, without turning off lights, use the blackness of the surface of the material to then cut down on the overall exposure in the room, on the subject. You'll see what happens when it gets on Lena's face. What time? 45 minutes. Let's see what we can do. 45 minutes, 1 second. This tape I can use to maybe tape the duvetine to the wall. I think I would have to duvet the entire wall in order to make that really worthwhile. And so with that, this is where we come into a part of the segment I call the 80-20 rule. What's the 80-20 rule, you ask? If by the time your clock is about to expire, you are 80% of the way, because you'll never, ever, ever, keep it in mind, never going to get 100%. So, looking at our exposure, Lena looks good. The background, not so bad. When I say not so bad, you know, it's all to taste. I do want to experiment, just literally like a hair's breadth that way. Yep. Aha! I'm glad you said that. Eye line. Where will our subject be looking? Our subject will be looking at the director. The director will be seated normally just off axis of the camera, keeping her vision on the same plane. So her eye line is going to be right here. I like to tell the talent when they're not doing it instinctively, hey, just match knees to knees with the director. Boom. And that automatically shifts exactly where I wanted her to be, because now her head is framed a bit differently against that window. Do I like it? I'm not sure. I could go either way. The other question I have is, do I like this practical? Do we want to see it on or off? You know, what's the time check? 53 minutes, 15 seconds. You know what? Without fiddling too much, without adding another thing to your plate, when you already have so many things to do, if your image looks good, if you're satisfied with it, if there are no C-stands in frame, if your subject is appropriately lit, if the background, subject, and scene in total is properly exposed, and if your director and your producers are now comfortable, they would probably err on the side of having 3 to 5, maybe 7, 10 in miraculous circumstances, extra minutes of being able to interview their subject. So why not give it to them? I guess we can mark it as done at 55 minutes. That's an extra 5 minutes for our director. That's an extra 5 minutes for our producers. That's an extra 5 minutes for our talent. I'll just show you what a close-up would look like in this instance. She looks great. Eye line is good. Exposure is reading very, very nicely. There's a beautiful roll-off, and the background is framing her face lovely. So there we go, folks. This is your quick 1-hour interview setup. Felt good to me. Hope it felt good to you. Thank you, Lena. Thank you, Jalen. Thank you guys. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, like, subscribe, make all the comments you care to make. And yeah, I'll see you for the next one. Look and live, y'all. Thank you.